Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Beyond the Letter. Today was special. We had a bunch of stuff me and Caleb was going to be talking about, but we just got back from Israel. Myself, Chelsie, I led a group from our church, and Caleb, Caleb is a little curious George himself. So he had a lot of questions for us today about Israel, the state of Israel, the American dynamic with Israel. And so what was going to turn into a small chat at the front end became the whole episode. So within this episode also, I mentioned a conversation I've had over 4 years ago with an Israeli citizen, a young girl in college, and her perspective of the world dynamic and Israel and religion itself. And so we have linked that little interview below, and you can watch that at the end of the episode and make it to the end to hear the context of why we did that interview. But go ahead, let's jump into the episode today. I hope you enjoy. All right, before we get started, before we get started, I know we had the Gen Z episode last weekend, so we could talk about that another time. But before we get started, I just recently got back from Israel, the Holy Land. Mm-hmm. I was in Jerusalem. Yes. Amen. Okay. And so I want to make a slight peace amends in this episode before we start. Okay. I still have my feelings towards Constantine, your emperor. Okay. But in the spirit of an olive branch and in the spirit of peace, when I was in Jerusalem, I went to an antiques dealer. I got you something special.
Oh my gosh.
I got you a coin from Constantine's rule with his face on it, and it says Constantine around it. This is a real Roman coin from 300 AD. That is for you, your emperor, your leader.
Oh my gosh. I love it. No, thank you. That's very nice.
That's
I love it. That's very nice.
That's my way of peace. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, wonderful.
That's just the kind of guy
we need role models in life, especially young men.
Yours is Constantine.
That's right.
Yours is a globalist conqueror who forced people into religious piety.
Yeah.
Okay. God bless you. All right.
Pretty much.
Chelsie was in Israel too.
I was.
She didn't know I got that, but
I didn't know you got that.
I did my own little sneaky.
Yeah,
I skipped out from everyone over in the Holy Land, over in Jerusalem.
I was trying to find me a man in Israel.
Oh, wow!
Yeah,
How'd that go?
Close. I got close.
Really?
She met a pizza guy.
Ooh.
Yeah,
oh,
I did.
Wow.
He tried to make the argument.
Not exactly a high value man, but I'm all ears.
Well, we don't know how much he made a day. He guesstimated he made 13 cents a day. But I
did, yeah.
Yeah, but he looked like he was well off. So
was he the owner of the business, the pizza business?
His dad was.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, I thought it was like
it's a legacy
delivery
business.
guy or
it's
something.
No.
It's legacy. And the pizza was good. Like,
well, he's a business owner.
The guy was hairy, too.
He was
hair everywhere.
Wow. He was
ears, nose, face.
No,
yeah.
No, he had some hair, but he wasn't.
What ethnicity was he?
He.
Well, she's in Israel, so
yeah,
one of three things.
Or what religion?
Yeah.
The guy,
he was born and raised in Jerusalem, but his parents had citizenship out here, and his mom and dad were from Ohio and New York.
Was he Jewish?
Yeah, he's Jewish.
Oh,
the reason I asked him where you from.
Well, there's your ethnicity.
Yeah,
Caleb.
The reason I asked him where he was from was because he didn't have an accent. He sounded like he was straight from America.
You would have to convert though.
That's what I told her.
That's what he said.
Well, Sanaa said he was a Palestinian.
No, he wasn't Palestinian. She said he looked Palestinian. He wasn't Palestinian at all.
Yeah, I told her. I told her if she has to convert, she's got to be ready to be that Jewish woman of the home.
Mm-hmm.
So I said no and
Shabbat
moved
shalom.
on, and I'm still single. So here we are. Podcast time.
But she follows him on Instagram.
No, I don't.
They WhatsApp each other every day now. It's ridiculous.
We found him on Instagram that night.
That's creepy
wow.
stuff, dude.
You didn't at least go on a date like teenage girls do when they go on vacations.
No,
have a date with
I forbade it because her father wasn't there. So
yeah,
I had to fill in my boy Jack Bayham in there, and I said absolutely not, absolutely not.
No
Papa
date.
Jack Bayham ain't here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna step in. No.
So no date. So we'll see where it goes. I have to go back to Israel just to see if he's doing okay. So there's that.
Wow.
It's a wild world we live in,
wild.
man.
Yeah.
Well, this is your 6th time, so you're like
He's a pro.
you're like Netanyahu's
So
ambassador
local.
at this point.
Nenny, my boy Nenny. Hey, I don't know if Chelsea. Hey, people recognize me out in the
People
streets.
knew
huh?
who he was. He would walk into stores,
Wow.
like, "Oh, I remember you." Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
big
People know him.
hugs. Give you Arab kisses on the cheeks. Everything. I'm
So-
famous.
He's famous in Israel.
In Israel, bro.
So who's nicer
As a
in
pastor.
Israel? Who has the best?
Got like
Who's
who's
the most hospitable
Who's the most hospitable?
in Israel?
That's a good question. Who's the most hospitable people in Israel? Because, you have Palestinian Christians, Palestinian Muslims, then you have Jewish, observant Jews, secular Jews. I would say the most polite people there are, it depends because
It does.
because
I agree.
the Palestinians are very welcoming in general. They're very nice, and there are a lot of the laborers, so they may be like your taxi driver or something like that, and they're very kind. They use, what I would say is they use a lot of politeness. So like a Palestinian would say a lot of things like please, thank you, stuff like that, stuff that's very common in our American culture. Observant Jews would be the most to themselves, like the Hasidic Jews and stuff like that. So like they won't even talk to you. Like and sometimes you'll get someone who will engage with you and maybe talk to you and be like, where are you from? But so there's a culture in Israel that says, on both sides, Palestinians and the Israelis, that like if they meet you, if you are welcome here, they'll tell you that. So like, let's just say, so I went into a McDonald's to get my boys some food, and we are in a really rural place. So like, they don't get a lot of like tourists, but we made a quick stop. So I jump in, and then the two workers who like knew no English, like when they finally give me their food, they're two Jewish individuals, but they were like, I would have to say they're secular Jews. None of them were wearing a kippah. She didn't look like she was observant in any way. So they'd be known as like secular Jews. So they say, where are you from? I said, United States of America. Their response is, you are welcome here. So it's almost like saying, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate Americans. I would imagine if I said somewhere that I wasn't welcome, I've always wondered, like, would they tell me you are not welcome here? I think they, maybe if I said I was, I don't know, from a country they weren't in favor of, that, there were some countries back in 1948 that didn't vote for their sovereignty. So I wonder if a country like that, like,
they hold it against them.
Like the UK, Britain, they voted no, or they either voted abstention or no in 1948 at the UN vote to make Israel a country. So I wonder if I would have said England. I might do it one time. See what they do.
Of course.
Say I'm from England. See if they say you are not welcome here. That would be crazy. That would be wild. So yeah, the observant Jews are kind of the most standoffish, they don't use any please and thank yous or anything like that. There's no politeness. If they bump into you, you bump into them. They don't say excuse me or anything like that. So, man, it's just, but by and large, I have experienced a lot of the Palestinians have been very kind, but a lot of the Israelis do too. So they're very nice as well. But I get a lot more of the American custom from the Palestinian group of people. They'll give a lot of more of the please and the thank yous and stuff like that. But from the Israelis, you get a lot of thank you for, if you say you're from America, you get a lot of appreciation from like an Israeli Jewish person. You get a lot of, we love America. Thank you for your ally. You do get a lot of appreciation at the same time from them too. But
is Bethlehem in Palestine?
Yeah.
So what other biblical lands are in Palestine?
Yeah, that's a good
Just
question.
Bethlehem?
Jericho is Palestine. Nazareth is part of Palestine. It's in the West Bank area.
So where Jesus grew up, basically, is all of that area. Yeah,
a lot of the Jesus locations, because Jews since 1948, when they came back, they weren't really concerned with any of the Jesus population kind of areas. So, for that matter, they didn't really move into those areas. So those have historically been most of the Arab population and the Palestinian population, but not all of them are like gated off. So like some of those Palestinian areas do have freedom. They're not like totally bartered off from going to and fro. Bethlehem is a place where it's a completely walled city, where like you have to have a certain passport to get in and out of Bethlehem.
Why is
that city.
Has it always been that?
No, it hasn't always been that. It was just, as certain areas in Israel will become more and more of a threat, like let's just say more and more people from a certain city and province do more terror attacks, they'll continue to strengthen and stricten their border patrol policy. So, so Bethlehem is one of those areas where a lot of violent terrorists have come out of, and so they've had to really, they don't mind Christians being in there, so we get to go in there and we can see the Holy Church, where it's believed that Jesus was born, that Queen Helena, your great emperor's mother, built, and stuff like that. So Christians are allowed, but Jews aren't, like practicing Jews. So observant Jews wearing a kippah or anything like that on the top of their head, they would not be allowed to be in the Bethlehem. Not because they couldn't go into it, but because for their safety, they wouldn't be able to go in there. And only people who have approved visas can come out to go to work.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, we can stay on this topic, but we don't want to get canceled or run into any sticky, controversial things. But we love Israel. God bless Israel. But let's move on. Let's move on, because this could lead into a very interesting conversation, because it's such has so much history, and there's so many differing viewpoints, the geopolitics in Israel is something like you've never seen before, especially if you're in the old city and you see historical Catholics, which many Catholic sects have been there for 1,700 years. So a lot of the Catholics just believe they belong there because they've had it for 1,700 years and it's their holy site. So the Catholics are kind of off in their own world. And then you have evangelical Christians like us, who are like seen as the allies to Israel and the Jewish people in Israel, who believe that they should have statehood, believe that they should have sovereignty in the country, while also understanding that there is a group of people who have been there prior to the establishment in the 1940s. And so there's a lot of dynamics that go on. And I've shared a few with a few people is like, when I'm there, because a lot of times when you take a tour, most of the time you'll just kind of see the Jewish side of how things are living and happening, because you're either going to locations of Jesus, which are most of the locations are churches ran by the Catholic Church, or you're going to Jewish places. So you're going to go to Mount Carmel and see where Elijah rained down the fire on the prophets of Baal. You're going to go towards towards many places like David, where David killed Goliath. You're gonna see a lot of Old Testament places would be a lot of Jewish places. So like when we go to those places, we see a lot of like Jewish kids on field trips, at the Jewish locations. And if you're gonna go see King David's tomb, you're gonna see a lot of observant Jews. But as you go to kind of involve yourself in the city, so like I did, like I got a tattoo in the old city by Palestinian Christians. It's owned by Palestinian Christians. I got my haircut from a barber who's a non-observant Jew from Queens, who had got like tattoos everywhere. And there, as you talk to the people, you start to hear it from the horse's mouth, how these geopolitics exist in Israel. And like whenever I take a group there, because we, for the most part, we just kind of think in terms of black and white in America. Like everything today nowadays is like, it's a white issue, it's a black issue. That's it. It's a Democrat issue, it's a Republican issue. Like when you're in Israel, there's Palestinian Christians, there's Palestinian Arabs, there's Armenian Catholics, and then there's Roman Catholics, and then there's Jews, and then there's secular Jews, observant Jews, Hasidic Jews. And so it's like, and then you have what's called the Druze, Druze, which were the descendants of Moses's father-in-law. They're there too. And then you have Bedouins. Jethro.
Yeah. So a group of people live in Mount Carmel who trace their descendancy to Jethro. And so they believe in reincarnation. So they believe you could be a butterfly or be whatever, and they're in Israel. So like the dynamics of like how people think and process is very hard whenever I take, because it's my 6th time and I'm normally leading groups. So like the dynamic in the country of Israel is very different than you can conceptualize around your head in America that thinks very black and white. There's a lot of gray in Israel that everyone's processing through at all times, and stuff like that. And so right now it's conservative leadership that's in leadership in Israel, which that's what tends to be the most populous desire from people and stuff like that. Definitely from the Orthodox observant Jews, is more of a traditional, conservative step. But there is also a liberal side in Israel as well. Like in Tel Aviv, the LGBTQ community can be publicly can publicly be homosexual, and it's the only place in the Middle East where you can be gay and you can be out and say that you are. Anywhere else in the Middle East, it's illegal. So
it's like the San Francisco.
Yeah, of all of Israel and the Middle East, So there's a lot of those dynamics that exist, but it mainly just hangs in Tel Aviv, that one city. It definitely doesn't go out into Jerusalem. So it's a crazy thing to see for yourself. And every group I bring, it always takes a very long time for them to wrap their head around the dynamics in Israel and the dynamics of Palestine and the dynamics of what's happening amongst the people in the country,
Well, it's fascinating. I have so many questions. I could literally be here for 3 hours talking about this, because
here's what I think is because I was thinking about it.
But
yeah,
do we want to move on, or do we want to stay on this? Because I could stay on this. I just what's best for this show, and we may edit this after, but I could stay on this the whole time. I got tons of questions. You're coming fresh off of it, or we can move on to something else. But I think the whole discussion of Israel is fascinating, and and coming from insiders, kind of like yourselves, you're kind of more insiders now,
because we've been there.
Been there,
but especially you, kind of as an ambassador and leading trips and stuff. But we can stay on it, or we can.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, stay on it.
Should we dig into it?
You got some fascinating questions. Gun them.
All right. Okay. So
do you want to stay on it is the question.
He does.
Well,
but
no,
I think
if you guys
he doesn't want to.
But we have a couple interesting things that we also thought about talking. So I don't know, but because I think that weed discussion is pretty funny. But okay, but yeah, so we could stay on this, but
it still is a relevant conversation. It's relevant in Israel for everyone. They're always talking about it. And then obviously we're now in America consistently talking about it. And we have individuals in our popular media who are maybe either anti-Israel or just right now anti-Jews in America. And so it's good to understand these parallels that are existing right now, and even as pastors talk about it,
Yeah. So I think about we grew up in the American Evangelical Church, Black church. You would call it Black American Evangelical Church. And a lot of people have questions with why does it seem like Christians are so, specifically American evangelical Christians, so supportive of Israel? Why is there such a strong alliance with Jewish people and Israel? And there's some confusion there, because they say, well, don't the Jews reject Jesus as their Messiah? So how can Christians? Why is it that Christians ally with Jews so strongly when they deny Jesus as the Messiah? And my personal answer to that question, you have to trace it kind of back to the early 1900s, late 1800s, when dispensational premillennial theology started to take root in American evangelical Christianity. And that theology basically says that there is still a future for ethnic Israel, and that right now is the church age in which the Gentiles are being saved who accept Jesus as the Messiah, and the majority of Jewish people are rejecting Jesus as the Messiah, and so are not saved in that sense. And in the future, God will save both Jews and Gentiles and make them one church. So there's that element to that theology.
Yeah.
There's a second element to that theology that puts priority on the land of Israel as specifically an eternal inheritance for the ethnic Jewish people.
Yeah.
Who trace their roots back to the Abrahamic covenant.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to give people a perspective on, because it's kind of confusing right now, because there's people who are against Israel. There's people that are pro-Israel. There are people that are pro-Palestine and feel that Israel is abusing Palestinians. And there's just all of this conflict right now and this confusion. And so I think one of the elements that I can speak to, having grown up in the Christian evangelical church, is to give that kind of perspective. Yeah. Why is it that Christians love Israel so much, support Israel so much? And it is traced back to that theology that took root in the 1900s, and that in 1946, the birth of present-day modern Israel was kind of a result of that ideology.
100%.
And giving ethnic Jewish people that land. And there is a ethnic prioritization of Jewish ethnicity in Israel. In other words, you can't be a citizen of Israel unless your DNA is traced as an ethnic Jew.
Correct. Yeah.
So there is this ethnic prioritization. Mm-hmm. Some would even say ethnic supremacy. If you looked at it in a certain light, where ethnic Jews in Israel are given better standing in the community, correct?
Yeah.
And so there is an element of that as well. And right now you're seeing kind of this. Here's where I stand on it. Mm-hmm. Here's where I stand on it as far as I think that I don't argue with God's will. I'm not going to argue with God's will. Say 1946 was a mistake or what it's God's will. Yeah. I'm not going to argue with the present leadership, the present politics of Israel. I trust in God's will that this is his predetermined plan for Israel in this current time in history. But my questioning comes in when we as Americans, we put more of a priority on Israel than America in our government. I think that's where a lot of the issue lies. Why are we putting so much money and support and emphasis on Israel, a country that has nothing to do with our daily lives, when we could use that money to pour into the black community in America, to rebuild, to build the black culture or black communities, or Hispanic, or not to hate on white Americans, which is in vogue right now. Mm-hmm. To hate on white Americans, the white Americans that founded this country, and also on the other end, the black Americans that helped found this country and build this country, and the Hispanic Americans that helped found and build this country. And so that's my problem or that's my question with this whole thing, is that's fine if we want to support Israel, bless Israel, and so on. But let's take that equal, if not more, energy and support and money and finance and put it towards the black community, put it towards the Mexican community, put it towards the white community. Not hating on the white community, not trying to destroy the culture and the traditions of this country that made us great, or of England, of Europe countries that made them great. Why are the people that want to keep Israel the way it is and keep the ethnic purity of Israel and the prioritization of ethnic Jewish people in Israel a priority? Mm-hmm. Those same people who want to destroy America and their traditions and their bloodlines and their stake in building this country. And same in Europe. So the same people that are, want to build a wall around Israel are the same people who want no walls in other countries, who want to just a mass influx of illegal immigrants who come in and erase the histories and the traditions that built those countries and made those countries great. Yeah. There's a reason why we visit Italy and Israel and Rome and all of these great civilizations, because of the culture and the traditions that they've maintained. To visit
Japan, China,
Japan, to visit a 1,500-year-old cathedral.
Yeah.
And yet we have people, leaders in our country, in the West, that are trying to destroy those monuments, trying to destroy that culture, whereas they want to keep Israel and keep it culturally distinct. Let's have that same energy towards these other cultures and towards these other civilizations. Let's be consistent, and so with that said, I guess my whole point is I'm against like this one world government globalization agenda that's going on. And so I just want to maintain, let's use the same standards we use for Israel, and we apply those same standards to other countries that certain leaders are trying to destroy, actively destroy.
Yeah.
They don't want tons of illegal immigrants in Israel. No, it's very it's very controlled, right? It's very controlled. It's very, and so
there's no such thing as illegal immigration in Israel.
That's my biggest argument, my biggest question. Let's put all that money towards the black community. Am I right?
I agree.
Am I right? Billions of dollars,
that's a great argument.
Billions of dollars a year. Let's put that towards building.
But I mean, we take billions of dollars a year and put it in Planned Parenthood,
building
and stuff
Louisiana,
like that. Like there are.
Our money is spread to different places.
To me, I don't think it's one. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both and. One of the reasons.
Well, it's like Ukraine, right? It's like we're putting billions towards Ukraine.
Yeah,
we're putting billions towards Ukraine, a country that, if we're to be honest with ourselves, doesn't affect us at all.
Right?
Why is it our responsibility? Now, as a Christian, I'll pray for Ukraine. I pray for the peace of the world. But when our country is going through so much suffering, so much financial, economic hardship, and Black Americans, Mexican Americans, minorities that are suffering economically, if all of that money was put towards a specific community, I'm for that. Yeah. I'm for taking care of our own house before we can take care of our neighbor's house. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Listen, I'm not in disagreement with that. What I think is I think partly the American ideology and the American education system is currently responsible because we elect the interest of the people that go into office and build the committees that decide where our money is going. 100% right now, without a doubt, if America took their hand off of Israel, Israel may not exist tomorrow. And Israel knows that, and the Jewish people know that. Right. That's why when I'm there, they say, you are welcome here. And not only you are welcome here, they say, thank you for everything that you do. And so that's an aspect that historically, I think you traced just a few moments ago, I think you traced beautifully why we as evangelical Christians, which are the majority in America, have secured the interests of Israel, because we don't necessarily have replacement theology. We don't believe that when you read the word Israel, you replace Christian in terms of that term, which there are divisions of Christianity that do believe that. And historically, the Catholic Church believes that. And even the Catholic Church in Israel. The Catholic Church in Israel is concerned with their land and the Vatican and the Pope's desire to maintaining the holiest sites of Christianity in Israel. The Catholic Church does not have a massive worry about the Jewish people, nor a concern. They don't do a massive donation base to Israel like America does. But also that's part of that alliance, and that's part of that history of the elected officials who go in there as Christians, who believe in the maintenance of Israel and understand, should America pull its hand away from Israel tomorrow, that it would not succeed in the way that it has in the global geopolitics. And so that's something that's reoccurring. I don't think you need to take that away in order to focus on our backyard. I think the amount of money that we're spending in so many other areas of high spending in the country, and also the high inflation rates and just what we're doing in a country that, like you said, is not helping those that are in need, that's not helping those dealing with people's medical issues, dealing with people who are minorities, dealing with people who maybe that do get in the country, but now it puts on a strain of poverty. Like right now in the city of Pomona, where we have a church campus, majority of kids in the school system there are on supplemental food. So every single day, majority of the school gets free breakfast, lunch, and they can take home a dinner. But if you're a kid that has a maintainable house, you don't get that free. You know, you could go into a hospital and you can some if you're an immigrant, you can get free health care, but an American citizen can't. Like that is a lot of issues that we have. But again, it comes down to your elected leaders. Who are we putting in office? Who is dealing with these issues? Who are African Americans putting in office? Who are Hispanics dealing in office? Because right now, all we want to do is play the trumpet on LGBTQ rights. All we want to do is play the trumpet on abortion. That is an argument of ideologies. That is not an argument of stuff that it doesn't change tomorrow. Not at all. And so if you're looking for that change, you have to start voting in the politicians who are not feeding you that line by line rate that's just supposed to pull on your racial heartstrings or whatever it is. You need to say, what is this person actively going to do for change? And if that person isn't, then you vote for someone else, regardless of you think your vote counts or not. Like, to me, that is the issue, not just because there is geopolitics that exist. There are allies that America has to have and allies America doesn't have. And that is way too high
above
for
our
me
pay
to
grade.
Yeah. That's way above my pay grade. I'm like, because to me, at the end of the day, I have zero clues why we're spending as much as we're spending to Ukraine. I have zero idea. But I'm sure someone way smarter than me could come and explain it, and I could still disagree with it, but at least I'd be like, oh, well, I didn't see that side of the coin. And they may say, well, because historically, when you look at all the battles the past 300 years, if Russia had Ukraine, that's always been the front door to control. Okay, well, you know that better than I do. So you know that they need that country in order to do whatever it is that they got to do. Okay, I don't know that. What I do know is that solving a lot of the issues in our school system, like right away, the fact that someone has to get out of school. Now, I'm not in favor of paying off someone's student loans, because I think you went into it knowing what you were paying, and in some way you said yes, you signed that document. You were I apologize, you were dumb enough to think that by you getting a sociology degree, you were going to make $150,000 a year getting out of college and getting a loan for $100,000 at a 15% APR rate. No 18-year-old, and to me that is an advantage that the education and the political system does to 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds. It's a way to bond them for the rest of their life, to pay loans so that they can pay social securities to people who are aging. That is the kind of stuff that they're doing that is absolutely wrong. That's the stuff we need to be voting for, is to say, not. And you hear sometimes, should college be free or whatever it is. If college is going to be free, I don't think state colleges should be the only ones that should be free, because that's the ones people mostly argue about. I think private colleges should be free too. I think I should get a credit, because free college for the state also means that you're going to be fully educated by Caesar. So if you want to go to a Christian college, still got to pay it. So there's a lot of tricky, icy stuff where people say, oh, well, let's make college free. I'm game for figuring that out, but you need to be able to let private institutions have subsidies as well, so that a student can make a fair, balanced approach. Do I want to go to this school that believes that there's 2 million genders that they're teaching me at age 18, or do I want to go to this school that believes that there's two genders, male and female? Because if I go to this school, it's going to cost me $40,000 a year. But if I go to this state one that believes in all these 2 million genders, that one I can get it for $12.50 a semester. But there's a reason why they're making it free at that point. So I think that there are a lot of issues, and it's not necessarily like one-sided of just saying, hey, well, how come we're helping those guys out? To me, there majority of the time might be, and there could be corruption in it or whatever. That's far too advanced for me to know what's going on. But there could be some type of ideological thing that has to be done for our partnership in this country or that country or whatever else it may be. But in terms of what we're doing in our country, I agree with you in the sense that we are failing in prioritizing American needs and the American people and the ones that are truly struggling.
Yeah, and I think too, it's I think we kind of deceive ourselves to think that we live in like a true democracy, because just to give two examples, the institution of gay marriage and abortion in 1950s or whenever that happened, the majority did not vote on those. In fact, when you let's take gay marriage, when you listen to Obama's platform in leading up to his first election, he was against homosexual marriage. Yeah. So he actively campaigned against it. And it wasn't until he came into office that he signed it became an executive order. The people did not vote on it. So let's not deceive ourselves and say some of these laws that we have are from a democratic vote. We voted on it. We picked it. A lot of these rulers come into power and they act like dictators. And so there is a dictator element to even our country that we need to be aware of. And then abortion was another thing. We were totally hoodwinked by this case that turned out it was built upon a rape. The woman later regretted what she did because she testified that she lied to the American people in order to get them to make abortion a part of the Roe versus Wade. And she later became a Christian and said, I totally regret it. I lied to everybody. This is what happened. This didn't happen the way I said it happened. But the entire law was built around her testimony, and it wasn't built around a democratic vote. So all that to say is, like, I understand what you're saying, but it's also important to realize, like, it at the same time, like, it's not as this isn't a true democracy. There is an element of dictatorship even in our country.
But if we cared enough about the issues, we wouldn't vote.
That's not to say you shouldn't vote.
We wouldn't vote that person in a second time.
Yeah. Well, that's not to say you shouldn't vote. Yeah.
We still, in this particular case, like, let's just say someone was upset Obama flipped, right? Like, he got voted in the second term. So we still could have let our mouth speak. I mean, that's why there are term limits in case a politician flips or in case a politician doesn't make your priorities of what you voted them in for. And I mean, that comes down to like Charlemagne the God's thing on why he's gone on this tirade against certain politicians, because he has historically always campaigned for Democrats. And this was kind of his final straw, because he always felt like Democrats would put the black needs first above Republicans. And this latest time when Biden got in office, Charlemagne the God realized, like, I think that was just, goes back to Hillary Clinton's thing. Like, what do you always have in your purse? I got hot sauce. Like, it was like, we're like, oh man, like they were chumming it up for us, man. Like,
what did he recently say?
So, this would probably be about a year ago now, but, and he may still be going on this, but it was basically, he's always gone hard for the Democrat Party leaders, putting them on his show, giving them a voice to speak, because he's always felt that they're going to represent the black community needs the best, which I understand. If you feel like one particular person running in office will represent your community needs the best, then put them on whatever pedestal that you need to in order to get that voice out. But it just so happens this last time with Biden, when he came in office, Charlemagne the God saw like a lot of the promises, apparently in his eyes, that his cabinet said he was going to make, didn't follow through with it. So now he's gone hard, like anti-Democrats, tweeting about it and stuff like this about a year ago, going hard anti-Biden, hard anti these things. And then like and he was getting a lot of flack for it, for going so hard against them. But he basically came out and was just like, this party does not care about the black community like I thought they did.
Yeah.
In that sense. So to me, like that, and again, I'm not making a comment whether I agree with him or not. I don't, to me, this is what he saw. He saw like what you're saying in a democratic way. Okay, these people, they say they're going to represent my needs the most. I encourage people to vote them in. They vote them in. They don't represent my needs. What do I do? Well, now I publicly start saying they don't meet my needs. And as he's done that, he's gotten a lot of heat for it. You know, like you're not allowed. And then on the flip, he didn't become like pro-Republican. He just became like lethargic towards the whole thing. Like I always thought I was making a difference. And like now I'm seeing like I'm not. I'm just a pawn in this game type of thing. And so I don't know if that's currently still his view, but that's what he was actively doing on Breakfast Club and everything else. Is like he was hurt. He was mad because he had been such a trophy and a trumpet for those individuals, but him recognizing, oh, that this group didn't meet my needs, you know? And I've always kind of said that, like, as Christians, like sometimes we as Christians, we need to band together to make sure politicians represent our needs as a community. The only problem is in the evangelical Christian community, we can't unify just about on almost anything. Like the only thing we're unified on is death, burial, and resurrection. You know, that's kind of all we're rocking with at this point in America right now. So it's a tough plane to land on in America right now. And like I said, like in terms of the issues going on in Israel, like, we in America want to make things black and white. We just really want it to be binary, ones and twos. But the more you go into other places where it's a lot more nuanced than that, it's a lot more difficult. Our tour guide,
he said living out there, they're okay with not having the answers, and that's part of their culture. They're okay with saying, like, I don't know. Out here, we're not. We have to have the answers to everything. That's what I realized when we were out in Israel. They live in this gray, and yes, they're trying to strive for answers, but in the midst of it, they're okay in understanding we might not get the answer to all of our questions.
Yeah.
I mean, great points being said. I think that the discussion of Israel, but
here's my thoughts everywhere I go.
What's that?
You know, not to pivot it to, but here's my thoughts is like, and I partly was telling you this beforehand. It's like, you know, I was getting tattooed by a Palestinian Christian, and over there in Middle East, like what a lot of people don't understand is like you don't choose your religion chooses you at birth. So it's not like us in evangelical space. It's like, or just in America where, you know, there's this conscious decision that you make that you've either become Christian or Catholic or whatever else. Like when you're in the Middle East, like whatever home you're born into, that whatever that ethnicity is, but also whatever that religion is, that's what you are. That's what you're born into. So whether you believe it or not, you could, technically speaking, in the Middle East, you could be an Israeli Jewish atheist, you know? You could be a Palestinian Christian atheist. Like Palestinian represents your ethnicity, Christian represents the home of the religion, and then atheist represents your observation of religion. I have it or I don't. So like in Israel, a majority of the population is secular Jewish, non-practicing, non-observant, non-anything. That's 40%. There's 9 million people in the country. So millions of people read the Torah and the Old Testament as if it's a child's, you know, storybook. But as I'm getting tattooed from this guy, in Palestinian Christian, you know, he says he's Christian. So I say, oh, do you go to church? And he says, no, I don't go to church. And you know, when you're in America, your response would be, well, then you're not a Christian. You know, like that's the American response. Like you say you're Christian, you don't go to church, you're not a Christian, right? Part of it in his head is like, well, that's the box that I've been ascribed to when I was born. I'm a Christian. I'm going to be that till the day I die. But then as we're talking, I said, well, why don't you go to church? And he said, well, he's an Armenian Orthodox Christian. So he said, my Armenian church, the Orthodoxy, they don't care about the needs of the people. They care more about the religion than they do the people who practice it. they care more about maintaining the order of the religion than they do about some of us that are hurting, some of us that can barely pay our bills, some of us that can, yada, yada, yada. And he just starts listing it. And then he said, a lot of the Catholic orders here, they take care of their Catholic people, but my Orthodoxy, my Armenian Orthodox, man, they don't care about us. They don't care about if we're hurting, dying, whatever. And so I said, would you be open to going to church? And he said, I would if I found a church that actually cared about people. And I had this epiphany that like actually in Jerusalem itself, in the old city, like the words of Jesus, like they will know you by your love, is so true in the old city of Jerusalem. Like almost no one looks after each other. Like there are such religious barriers amongst people that there is no passing, there's no camaraderie for the most part, right?
You brought up that great illustration about like it's like having Bloods and the Crips and all the main gangs in like a 4 mile radius.
Yeah. That's basically
for
what it's
centuries,
like. Yeah, for
thousands
1,500 years.
Right.
That's what it is. Like just take MS-13, takes Bloods, takes Crips, take all the fragments of Bloods, Crips, blah blah, and put them in a 4 mile box in a walled city. And then give them their own little, three. If it's a 4 mile city, give them 3 blocks each, right? Yeah. Like that's kind of what it is, and there's some intermingling, but it's very minimal, and it's not a lot. And even in his sense, like, so I say that to say, like, as a Christian, when I'm there, and again, it would meet with a lot of friction, but as a Christian, when I hear his words particularly, right? Not when I'm talking to a Jewish person, because a Jewish person just kind of really, doesn't believe Jesus is the Messiah. And, many of my Jewish friends in Israel, they'll say, you guys believe you're going to meet Jesus for a second time. If it is Jesus that comes back, I'm willing to meet him for the first time. So they'll admit like, I'm willing to be wrong if he comes back. And, obviously the other Christian answer would be like, well, hopefully not too late, before he comes back. But like to so many Christians, there are a good amount of Christians, like not a lot, but there's a good amount of identifying Christians in Israel itself. And it seems as though like there is Jesus's words for us. They will know you by your love. Like it does not ring true in the Christian community in Israel. Like for the most part, they are not known for their love. So I'm sitting this guy like as a Christian, especially as an evangelical Christian who believes in reaching the world for the gospel, like I'm sitting there salivating at like wanting to get this guy a church. Like he probably never would step into my, right. Like he probably never would step in my church, but maybe he would, like, because a lot of them, they're stuck in their orthodoxy. So like, he'll be at the end of the day looking for his orthodoxy church to make those changes. But I'm like, maybe if he's disassociated it enough, like we could reach him. I could have a church. So like as an evangelical Christian, to us, like a lot of our answers for our stuff in the stuff you can't answer for us would be the gospel, it'd be Jesus. Like, and the Christians themselves that are in Israel, the Palestinian ones, like, for the most part, a lot of them do not have an active faith at all. It's just identified.
It reminds me of a testimony of a guy that I really helped me out of a tough time. His name is Howard Storm. He has a near-death experience, and he testifies that he encountered Christ when he was dead. Yeah. And the way I see those things, like if you're dead clinically and doctors prove you have records, and you say you saw Jesus, I'll believe you. I believe you. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Like if you dead on the operating table. But he said, he died, and he's an artist, and Jesus said you got to go back, and he was like, I'll build a cathedral for you. I'll do anything for you. Let me build a cathedral. That's what I'll do. And Jesus said, no, I don't want you to build a cathedral. I don't really care about those things. We don't care about those things up here. That's for you guys down there. Mm-hmm. That's for you. He said, so what do you want me to do to prove my love for you? I'm grateful you saved me. Jesus says, love the person you're with. Mm-hmm. Love the person you're with. So that's like, so often that's our natural mindset. Like, let me build a magnificent cathedral to you, God. But to God, what's important is, like you were saying, coming back to your what you experienced, loving the person that's in front of you. God values that way more than 10 million cathedrals on this earth that you can build for him. You know, and even Jesus said, like, when he was on this earth, after he would be crucified, not one stone will be left here upon another. You know how offensive that was to the Jews of his day? Because they valued the temple more than human beings, human life. And God is like, we got to rework your priorities here. I'm sending my son to reorganize to reprioritize your life. It's not about these physical objects. It's not about these things. It's about loving the person you're with. They will know you by your love.
Yeah. And you see that. I mean, you see that on the Christian and the Jewish side. I go to a barbershop when I'm in Israel too every time because it's a long trip. So I always need to get like my beard cleaned up or whatever. So there's this place right outside the old city called Nashville's, and it's like American themed inside, but they're all Jewish Israelis in there. So it just so happened that they got like baseball field posters and stuff like that. But ain't no one speak a lick of English. So like I go every year. Just so happens like the guy I go to get a haircut from this year is a guy who just immigrated to Israel 3 years ago, a Jew from Queens. Grew up in a Jewish neighborhood, but he like he's tatted, he wears a beanie, he's non-observant, but he's Jewish. So he thought like, you know, part of the sell, it's called Aliyah, like part of the sell, if you want to ascend to Israel, if you're a Jew anywhere around the world, like they'll pay for you to come, they'll pay for your travel, they'll give you a stipend for like your first 6 months so that you can establish yourself in Israel. So he thought, oh man, this would be dope. Like this is what I'm going to do it. And America sucks, all this stuff like that. Right. Like I'm going to do it. It's going to be amazing. Right. Well, he leaves, he ascends, he goes to Israel, who moves. And he's now been there 3 years, but he said after he was talking to me, he's like, and he didn't speak no Hebrew, but he's a Jew. So he's like, I don't even care about learning, or he like sounds like he's from Queens, but like came from that Queensboro bubble, So he's cut my hair and we're talking for the whole time. Cause when I'm there, if I meet a non-observant Jew or anyone, like I'm gonna ask him questions like, what do you think about the state of everything here? I'm trying to understand how everyone just thinks differently there. So we're talking, but one of the things he says is he says, so what are you doing here? And I said, oh man, I'm a pastor. And then he's like, cut my hair. And a couple minutes later, he's like, you don't look like a pastor. And I just immediately thought like, well, you're from New York. Like, what us pastors look like. But then like as we're talking, he's like, no, I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. I lived in my borough like my whole life. He goes, I've seen like all that, like he goes, like this is coming from his words. He goes like, I seen that stupid guy out in New York who got robbed, who, there's recently that like black preacher in New York, he got robbed during his service.
Yeah.
So he laughs. He goes like, I mean, I saw that. Like, I know like those kind of Christians. And then he's like, and then I know like the priest Christians that are like, and then this is his words. He's like, man, these Franciscans and these other people, like they're mean, dude. Like I would never want to know Jesus if I ever met these guys, ever talked about Jesus with these guys. So he's just,
wow.
I mean, he's keeping it real. And then he's like, and then my own people, like the Jews themselves, man, they don't care about your neighbor. Like they don't, like if I meet another Jew from Queens, it's like, you're on your own. Like this is just coming from his words. So he's just telling me all that kind of stuff like that. So then he says like, man, I think it's cool. Like you seem like you'd be a pretty cool pastor. Like it was good chopping up. I hope we can talk again soon. I'm asking him about, so the reason why after a year, he was like, I want to go back to America, but he had a one night stand with a girl in Tel Aviv and she got pregnant.
Oh, no way.
And he can't get his daughter a passport back to America.
Oh, no.
Shoot. So now he's
stuck.
Yeah, he's stuck. Like he's stuck. But like the tax rate in Israel, I guess, is crazy and all this stuff like that. He told me like if you have a past due credit card for 30 days, you get served by the government, and they'll start repossessing your stuff if you're even 30 days late on a payment stuff. He said he owed $200 on a credit card during COVID. He was a month and a half late. He said he got served and said that he had court next month, and whatever he had that was worth $200 would be repossessed for it. I mean, so he's like, I want to leave. Like, he's like, I can't, but as we're talking, like, he's now like curious about my life. He's curious about what I do as a pastor. He's curious about, and as you could tell, like in our conversation, like he's never engaged with a Christian before. Like the Christian community in Israel and everyone is so kind of like in their own bubble that like, I'm one of the first pastors he's ever met, or Christian for that matter, that actually genuinely takes the teachings of Jesus and has conviction of them in the sense of a non-religious piety sense, in a sense that believes in the true conversion of the heart and the true conversion of the gospel through experience and through your life. Like he was fascinated by that when he's in the holiest city in the world where everyone of every religion is at his neighbor, and like he cannot get the answers he has about Jesus and life from any of them who pass by his door every single day, like, but I'm like, well, I do, I'm not perfect. I do that every day in America too. I pass by people every day and not talk about Jesus too. So the story ain't too much different, but it is in the sense that there is a spiritual hunger from a lot of people in Israel that are non-practicing and non-observant, because religion is so thick in the land that there is a hunger for people to see God in a way that is authentic and real, like in the days of Jesus, how Jesus came in and just flipped everything upside down with his desire to break down the chains of religion and bring in this relationship. And like you said, of the guy who died, but also Jesus's words, like 2 greatest commandments: love your God with all your heart and love your neighbor. Like it's like it's like summarized like that. And then you think, oh, that's pretty simple. But when you go to a place where that's not in practice, but even in America, it's not in practice nowadays. Like it is radical. To love God with all your heart is radical, and to love your neighbor as yourself is radical. It's two very radical things.
To me, the second one is how you do the first one. Like, how do you love God with all your heart? By loving your neighbor as yourself. That's the how. Yeah. Because you say love God, that's so esoteric. It's like, how do I love God?
Right. Do I do 5 prayers a day?
Yeah. Do I build a cathedral?
Yeah.
Do I, but it's love. How do you love God? By loving your neighbor. Yeah. And I have this testimony that I've been thinking a lot more recently, because I've been thinking about, just more recently, about just how much I love Muslims. And so, but it reminded me of,
Can you qualify what you mean by that?
Yeah.
I love all people. I love Muslims. And so, I've just been thinking about this, since I've been loving them more. I've been loving them as people.
You love the culture.
Yeah, because I was so, growing up in the early 2000s, post 9/11, and up until modern day,
Islamic phobic.
Muslim.
I'm not gonna say Islamic phobic.
Yeah, Islamophobia.
You weren't scared of them, but you were.
What sparked your love for it?
They've been well. I'm getting that. I'm building the context. Got it. Yeah. So, but what I'm saying is, especially even growing up in the evangelical church and watching TBN all the time, and you have this constant demonization of Muslim people, and this fear of Muslims, and this stereotyping of Muslims, right? And so I grew up with that, and it just had a more of an imprint on me. Not only because it was in American culture, it was the basis of going to war for 20 years, right? Afghanistan. And so we were constantly fed, be afraid of Muslims. And so, being in the evangelical church, oftentimes they didn't help much with that sort of constant harboring. But anyway, so I go back to when I was 6 or 7 years old. and I'm an introvert kid. I've always been kind of an introvert, right?
Yeah.
I'm not active. I'm not like you. I'm not the center of the room and conversation and, you know, the Gatsby. I'm not the Gatsby, right? I'm not Gatsby. So, you know, and so I'm sitting on a bench all by myself. No friends. I have no friends. The beginning of the school year, I think it was a new school, right? I'm sitting on a bench, and everyone's playing. All the kids are playing, and a Muslim boy came up to me and invited me to be a part of his friend group. They were playing basketball, and I remained a part of their friend group for the rest of that year, playing basketball with them.
Yeah.
But I've thought a lot about that recently, something I'll never forget, because it was the first time a real act of love was shown to me, and it wasn't from a Christian. Now, I've received amazing love from Christians throughout my life, so don't get me wrong. But the fact that, like, the first imprint of love that I experienced as a child was from a Muslim boy. And then we remained friends for a couple of years. His name was Obed. We remained good friends. And then I was thinking, too, I was like, right after kind of that phase faded away, I came in junior high. Just so happens my best friend in junior high was a Muslim, too.
Yeah.
You know, he was a great friend. We played basketball together. But that was when 9/11 happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so once 9/11 happened, and then just all of the, you know, the news, the propaganda, all of that stuff was built around that people group. I distanced myself from him. I started, and that was like the first time in my life that I started seeing somebody as the other. It was the first time in my life that
So for you, because you were raised in a black church,
I was raised
for
in,
you, it wasn't a black person or a white person.
Exactly.
It wasn't ethnic. It was
exactly
religious,
and it came from our conservative culture, because they're the big ones that fed into it. It came from TBN, a lot of times. It came from evangelical Christianity that demonized Muslims more than other types of people, that put an emphasis on that. And that was the first time in my life where I saw him as something to be feared, as somebody, you know, to be shunned, as somebody that, I needed to save. And not in the positive sense of evangelism, but like, you know, he believes in an evil religion that's destroying us, and, you know, that just wants to blow up buildings. And I need to save him. I need to tell him about Jesus. So that was the first known memory. Like, we grew up in a black church. For all I knew, whites were the minority. Yeah. Because our entire life was built around black people.
Yeah.
You know, and so
for sure,
I was the minority in my little ecosystem. Yeah. I was the minority. It wasn't until I was in high school and college that I realized, the majority of America is white.
Yeah.
Wow, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But I just say that to say it just goes to show
I had
you
my
that
first white friend at 17.
What?
You know?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever had a white friend. I was thinking about this the other day too. They were either like Muslims, they were black.
Yeah.
A lot of blacks,
I only went to a white person's house once, and it was prom night. And they were playing beer pong, and it seemed so white to me. It seemed so white to me. And I was Christian, you know, like it seemed so white to me. I literally stayed for 10 minutes.
And you left?
And I didn't judge them anyway. I felt like such a fish out of water. They were like, Adam, you want to throw the ping pong? And I'm like, into what? And they're like, this cup. And I'm like, what is this? You know, like. And so after 10 minutes, I went home. You know, like it just. Yeah. And I'm more used to like going to a black, like when I was growing up, we go to a black person's house.
Oh yeah.
And the mom wouldn't let the kids take a drink of water until they were done with their food.
Which is now, because recently, now that I think about it, I was having like lunch with a friend the other day who was not black, and I was fine with just my plate of food. She literally said, "Do you want something to drink?" I'm like, I really haven't drinking anything.
That's like child abuse.
It is.
No, because you want to know why?
Oh yeah, you got it. Yeah, I've never figured it out.
You never figured
Why?
it out because you. Because you don't want to get full off your drink.
Oh.
You got to finish your food. You don't
Literally,
wanna
my
get full.
parents would say,
Wow.
because usually at restaurants they'll bring the drink out first. Don't drink too much of that; you're gonna get full.
Yeah,
As I get older, I'm like, where did that philosophy
yeah.
start?
But
It's
that
just water.
That to me was more normal than beer pong. You know, like
Oh, yeah,
you know, like
yeah,
having
yeah.
to wait to drink your drink until because I grew up, I'll be in so many black homes. You know, like
Yeah, but going back to like, I just sum it up with this. Like the point of that story was when God God was more pleased with that Muslim boy made in His image, showing that act of love to me, than He was the average Christian who went to church that Sunday.
Yeah.
Who just went to church and just didn't do anything. Just went to church, showed up, just did their little religious routine. I think God was more pleased with that little Muslim boy, showing that act of love to me. So it goes back to say, it's all about loving your neighbor.
yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Chelsea saw this when we were in Israel. It made a few of our, because we take a church group, so we take 60 of our people, right? And well, like you, but my degree, my college studies was world religion. So I know quite a bit about the major religions, definitely the major ones. So no one would have an issue if right now I said, speaking of someone who is Jewish, and I said, man, we worship the same God. No one would have a problem with that. Like no one have any issue with that. Yeah, Christians and Jews, they worship the same God. So I make a statement early on when I'm in Israel, and I'm like, we Christians and the Jews and the Muslims, we're all worshiping the same God. We're all trying to access the same God.
God of Abraham.
With the God of Abraham. We're the only religions in the world that are talking to the same God. All other religions are false. All other religions are pagan. All other religions pray to no one or no thing. So whether it's Buddha or whether it's Hinduism or anything else, like it's just like Elijah and the prophets of Baal. Like it's a non-existent God that you've created out of your own mind. Muslims, Jews, and Christians are praying to the God of Abraham. And so we set our eyes on the God of Abraham. And I had a few people in our group come up to me and were really uncomfortable that I said we worship the same God as Muslims. They were really uncomfortable with that and just was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about you saying that, and I appreciated their honesty. But as I explained to them, what I did not say is that we all have attained salvation. What I did not say was we all have the same access to God, because Christians believe that our access is through Jesus. We believe salvation is only through the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus. So that is not what I said. I didn't say that we all have salvation. What I said was we're all attempting to reach the same person. That's what it is. And like you said, for a lot of people, especially evangelical Christians, we have no problem saying that our neighbor is the Jew. But we got a big problem saying that our neighbor is Ishmael, and our neighbor. And I got a lot of Jewish friends in Israel that are really trying to push hard in terms of even awakening their own Jewish people with the Abraham Accords going on, which I believe is Trump who put that in effect. But with the allyship of Israel and many Middle Eastern countries in this huge endeavor that was incredible. It brought peace between Israel and a lot of Middle Eastern countries, which a lot of Islamic countries aren't totally in favor of. But in that same sense, like, because he said it also, and Chelsie knows this, and they had an issue with it too, is like, he's like, I brought some friends from Dubai here to Israel, and they needed to pray, so I took them to a mosque. And so while they were in the mosque praying, I was outside of the front of the mosque, and I was doing my prayers that morning, my observant Jewish prayers. And he said, I thought it was beautiful that that the sons of Israel and the sons of Ishmael were in the same place praying to the same God. And some of our people were like, I don't know how I felt about that statement.
And I'm like, oh,
where
it
does
makes
that
you feel
ideology
uncomfortable.
come?
you
Yeah,
know?
where does that uncomfortability come from? Is that from the own ideas of American people, or is it something like the?
It's the American gospel. Like it's what Caleb just said.
But
it's
I feel like it goes completely against what the gospel states, which is
well,
loving your neighbor.
It's this blend that certain division of Christians in America have blended patriotism, politics, and religion into one centrical force, where those things are important to have blend. Like when you go to Israel and you see the nationalism of everyone, like every American that I end up taking like to Israel and see this incredible nationalism that Israel has, they always come back and, like you said, we need to do this in America. And I'm like, well, right now in America, it's an anti-national, environment. It's step on the American flag.
Right.
It's the
Globalism.
put a middle finger to the flag and stomp on the American flag, whatever it is, right? And so, there's this ideology in a certain group of people that have mixed all of those three frames. So basically, like if a sect of Islam, which a majority of Muslims aren't necessarily in favor of, but if a sect of Islam does this thing wrong, then it's all of them as a whole, like, and as Christians who blend in the nationalism in America, it then becomes this a distaste towards all of them and a horror of all of them and a lack of unity in all of them, not understanding that America is supposed to be a free place for all religions, for all expressions of religions, and for a good group of Christians in America, they have a lot of issue with that. Not because I think they have a personal conviction of it. I think it's because they've been believed that that's what they're told they need to do, is like Muslims are the enemy and Jews are our friends, when they both could be our friends.
I was thinking about this. This is something I was thinking about, and it's an interesting thought, right? So many evangelical American Christians hate on the Catholic Church, right?
For sure.
And specifically, they hate on the worship of Mary, what they see as the worship of Mary. And I'm like, but to me, it seems like this American Christianity that we're talking about that gave rise to an emphasis on Israel, and it's almost like Israel has become evangelical American Christianities. We worship Israel the way Catholics worship Mary. Because Catholics don't necessarily have a theology built around Israel like American evangelicals do.
Well, historically, would they be? I could be wrong because I'm drawing a blank. Historically, are they amillennial?
More in that camp.
That's what Augustine was,
more
right?
in amillennial. Yeah, exactly.
Like
more
amillennial. The Catholic Church replaced the promises of Israel.
So the church
correct?
is Israel.
Yeah, right.
So the church is Israel. There's not an ethnic distinction of the church, Gentiles, and Israel like evangelical Christianity has. It's all become one now. The church
and the Pope
is the true Israel.
The Pope is the Davidic line of the throne.
Peter.
That lasts for. But I mean, like the headship of the church, like
exactly,
is the eternal throne of God.
Right. So what I'm saying is, we can kind of be American Christians can be hypocrites sometimes, because it's like we'll demonize Catholics for worshiping Mary, even though Catholics will tell you it's not worshiping, it's honoring Mary. Personally, I don't honor Mary because that's not my tradition. I'm not used to it. I'm not convinced of it. But I respect the fact that they do, and I believe that they're brothers and sisters in Christ who we're going to see in heaven because they confess Christ as Lord and Savior. And even that's controversial from an evangelical to say.
Weird? Isn't that weird?
But it's like, isn't it crazy though? But isn't it crazy though? Like, it seems like we've replaced Mary with Israel. I mean, Israel is like one of our key tenets of faith almost, where it's like, if you don't bless Israel, like that's not the gospel. Like we've connected like blessing Israel somehow to the gospel itself. That like, if we don't bless Israel, we're going to hell almost. It's become like so tied to our gospel, and that's something that I disagree with. Like I don't put a priority on Israel as a part of the gospel.
I got to think of a couple people that really hold to these motifs that you're saying, and I have friends that do, and I should ask them if they're comfortable coming on to like I just said, like what I said earlier is like we may be ignorant to something or an aspect of it, right? Like maybe someone would be willing that we could find that would be able to explain better the theology behind the marriage. And I have people I'm thinking in mind. I just have to think if they were comfortable about having that. Well, I know me and you differ a little bit on the realization in that because I've been to Israel, and so there's certain convictions I have in terms of being pro-Israel and having a form of Zionism that I believe in, but also the dividing arch of like, to Christ be the glory, you know, like that's my first mission, that's my first mantra, but like you said is like, and you've said this to me before, like there are a lot of countries who are hurting that need our help, you know, and I'm like, and I've told you like, and the moment America wants to go help them, I'll be pro them too, you know. But in that same sense, I would wonder if there's someone we could jump on of my friends that are pastors that really hold to, like you just said, that viewpoint of I mean, because I believe in you bless Israel and all that stuff like that. But in the sense that they believe, I have friends that believe you cannot be a Christian and not hold to that.
Right. That's that's what I disagree with.
And I do have friends that I know that, and I wonder if they would.
Here's my question to that.
What's the theological background?
Well, here's
of that, though?
here's the question. Here's the question. It's like,
they would know better.
what were Christians doing pre-1946? Were they not real Christians? Because they couldn't bless Israel because it didn't exist in the form that we know of it today.
Yeah.
So for nearly 1950 years, what were Christians believing in? They didn't have Israel in their mindset. They had the church. They had Christ's kingdom on this earth in their mind. They had, you know, their various forms of denominations, Catholicism, and so on. But they didn't have Israel in their psyche as an emphasis like we do today. And that just could be as a dispensational. I can argue from premillennial dispensation because I am to its, I don't know, half the week on premillennial, the other half on postmillennial nowadays. But
any of the stuff we're saying you can Google too. I wish we could explain each word we're using. But
but the dispensational basically says God has different ages, that he deals with humanity differently in different ways. But so you can say post 1946, we're in a new dispensation where Israel is now an emphasis. You can say that. But my whole thing is that, like I said, I don't want to go against God. It's God's will in the present moment that Israel is Israel and has all the benefits that come with it. And so I don't want to argue against God's will in that sense. But it does kind of strike me as odd.
Mainly because here's the thing. If I'm going to put it black and white, and we know this about you, you always root for the underdog. So as far as you know right now in the American context, and I'm not fully ascribing your thoughts for you, but right now in our American system, we're told that Palestine is suppressed and the Palestinian people are suppressed and oppressed. Like, I think there's an element of you that you always root for the underdog. And so when you hear of any person that could potentially be oppressing or be the biggest fish in the pond, you automatically have the lens of, I want to wrestle out, or even for Christians, even American Christians, where you see them as the oppressor in certain areas. Like you have this underdog that you always want to root for the underdog. And you always want to find
those who are being
the bright
attacked.
Light that is being attacked. Like that attacked. Isn't, and I think some people need to know that, because some people may be trying to make sense of like what it is that you have questions about, but mainly you have questions about someone being an underdog and someone in your eyes that you think is being potentially oppressed or suppressed in what we're told in the American context or the global context, right? And so, and I'm not saying, you know, I don't agree or disagree. I'm just saying I know from your lens, like that is the way that you view. And so, well, I think two things need to happen.
You're right. When Americans are suffering at the expense of, you know, our globalization of the world, trying to conquer the world and, you know, put all these funds towards other countries and places so that the elites and the leaders can just get richer and wealthier at the expense of the poor and those who are suffering at their hands. Yes, that's my argument. In a sense, you're right. I am for the oppressed in the sense that, you know what, I'd rather that money go towards our people in America, the suffering in America, than another land, you know, that, you know, doesn't necessarily affect our lives and makes the wealthy wealthier and
So
you
I
know,
say that to say I think two things need to happen out of interest of this conversation. Number one, I want to bring on a professor of end times, and I want to have a discussion
be awesome.
on end times and eschatology, like what we're wrestling out with this amillennial, premillennial, and postmillennial. Because to me, that's where I think a lot of people don't understand a lot of these arguments and a lot of these beliefs come from, especially as a Christian, where you land on the theological spectrum. It's even when it comes to Israel, like where do you land? So me being a premillennial person who believes that there is a future with Israel and there's a place for Israel, like that is the level in which my mind first reconciles and then works backwards from there. Like my premillennial moment, and also believing that Jesus is coming back to Israel, have his throne on Israel. I know slightly your argument was whether it's Israel or not, he's coming back to that throne. But I do believe that I think it's the statehood. I think there's a statehood of Israel too. I don't necessarily think it's the land. I think it's also the statehood. I think that the second coming of Jesus for many Jews that will be alive at that time will be their first coming in Israel. And should the Jewish people not have the statehood in Israel, there would be no Jew to see the second coming of Jesus in Israel, because they would not be welcomed there. So that's where I start with my premillennial view and work backwards, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm perfectly fine admitting that in that sense, and that's how I've always where we've talked privately.
I believe that too. I think the 1,000 years is going to be in the literal land of Israel.
Yeah, I mean, I know you agree
yeah.
with that. I know, but your view is he could establish that reign in that sense. I think he's coming to the statehood. The statehood is going to be established. It's there. My viewpoint is and also what I tell other Christians is Temple Mount, where there's a mosque and a dedication to Muhammad. At some point, I believe there has to be a conflict or whatever it may be, or a peace treaty, but something has to happen where if the second temple is going to be built, those mosques have to go. And so the only way those mosques are going to go, any Muslim is going to let those mosques go, is probably through conflict. No, I don't see any peace treaty where they believe Muhammad ascended to heaven on Temple Mount in Jerusalem. I don't see any Muslim authority on this earth releasing Temple Mount to the Jewish people to set up their second temple. So at some point there's going to be some type of conflict. There's going to be a massive type of implication should that happen. And so even where you and I have joked before, where people have said they got the heifers in Israel, I'm like, listen, the heifers is the red heifer thing is so secondary to what needs to happen on Temple Mount, which is there's two mosques standing in the area that the Jews need. In order for them to gain control of that and demolish it is going to come with a lot of conflict and probably a lot of war in order for that thing to happen that day. And so where I'm looking at that stuff and reconciling all that stuff, that's why I think it'd be, number one, cool to bring on a professor of eschatology to have that conversation these end times, breaking down the Catholic view of amillennialism in understanding some things, postmillennialism and premillennialism. That
would be great.
It's a big conversation. And,
yeah.
and we'd be fascinated. I mean, we can have that conversation, but I wouldn't say that because we're Bible teachers and pastors.
Well, the seminary I went to is the biggest dispensational premillennial seminary on the planet.
Yeah.
I'll get my alum rescinded if they hear that I'm doubting this.
Yeah.
But my thing is I don't. The heart of what I'm saying, because I agree on most days with what you're saying. I agree. I mean, this is eschatology, right? I mean, so there's some room for.
No one's interested in this conversation. Me and Caleb are.
but the heart of what
Today
I'm
has been
saying,
therapeutic for
the heart
Caleb.
of, I think Israel, America should be first because we're Americans. Israel should be second. That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
Israel second. America first. We're Americans. We need to take care of our own house before we can worry about people in other parts of the world. Now, I speak that as a non-politician. I don't know geopolitics. I'm not an expert. But
who are you working for?
But
who's paying you?
That's all I'm
Show me
saying.
your
That's
bank
all I'm
account.
saying.
Show me your bank
Is that
account.
so
Who you working
controversial?
for?
Is that controversial? America first, Israel second.
I mean, I don't think Israel's first in America in in so many views, but I respect I respect your opinion on it. I mean, I don't. We do a lot. We do a lot for Israel. We built their Iron Dome and gave them the money for it. That's their number one.
I know. So why don't we build an Iron Dome in America?
Because we don't need to. We don't have rocket bombs coming into our.
No, we should have a wall.
We should just have a wall.
We should have a wall.
Listen,
let's finish that wall.
Yeah.
Make America first. That's what I'm saying. Now here's where my politics is coming out, but I don't think
he said that like he was
because here's the thing. Here's the thing because I want our black communities to thrive.
Yeah,
and I think
as you being a black person, right?
Yes. I'm like Eminem. I was raised in the black community
on 8 Mile Street.
I'm like Eminem. I'm
so I just think with open borders, illegal immigrations, it's our minorities who suffer.
I agree, but
the
we're
most.
doing this to ourselves.
I know.
We're the Hispanic community. We're doing this to ourselves. African American, we're doing this to ourselves.
But that's what I'm saying is let's have the same standard.
Like
that's all I'm saying. We're doing great things with Israel. We're doing great policies with Israel. Let's take those same great policies, those same great things we're doing for Israel, and let's do it for America. Let's do it for America. Let's focus on our own people first. Right? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I think the whole first thing is like a
BB, maybe you could teach us how you do your thing. You could help us implement that stuff. Get us an Iron Dome. Get us a wall. Get us. Well, it's the legal immigration. Get us.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a level. I think part of it is redundancy. I think the first thing is that's where I get caught up. You saying, "Oh, I think America needs to come first." I think there's a redundancy in that because I think you could do both ends. With the amount of spending that we do in America and the amount of spending we do on stupid things, you could easily redirect those funds and put them in the areas that you're suggesting while also taking care of our allies and also our convictions, which a lot
that's
of
what I'm saying.
Israel's
America
an ally,
first,
but
Israel
they're
second.
also,
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but you're putting a number. I think America is first. I think America is first. We just, in being first, we're last. The way that we're ascribing the first in America is the wrong divination of funds. Like we have the money there. It's not like we're saying,
we have the resources.
It's not like we're saying, okay, we got $150 billion to go here, or do we give it to Israel, or do we have it here, or do we give it to Ukraine? No. They're saying, okay, we have $150 billion. Give Ukraine their $8 billion. We'll take the $150 billion we're going to spend, and let's give it to this group. Let's go fund this thing. Let's go put it towards gender education. Let's go put it towards building a new this or a new that. Like
our leaders are destroying us. I wouldn't say we're destroying ourselves. I would say our elite, corrupt leaders are intentionally destroying our country. And while putting a focus on Israel and them maintaining their distinct identity and culture.
Not all are putting it first.
So let's have that same energy and put it towards us.
The reason why a lot of them are quote unquote putting Israel first is because they know that is a hard stop for many evangelical Christians. So they know that as evangelical Christians, especially minority evangelical Christians like African Americans, Hispanics, like they'll let certain politicians fudge around on abortion. They'll let them fudge around on LGBT because if you just talk to the most common and even most common young Christian, like even a white Christian nowadays, like one that's like 25 and younger, like their whole view is just like, I'm just trying to stay out of their business. Mm-hmm. So if it's LGBTQ or if it's abortion, it's just like, hey, it had nothing to do with me. Let me stay out of it, right? Yeah. But if any politician went after Israel, because that's built in our DNA for the most part, like they're smart enough to know, like, oh, I can mess around with all these other things, but I do have to maintain this this relationship with Israel, or I'm going to lose a big populace of my voters if I don't do that.
I don't think they should be against Israel. I'm saying they should just have that same energy.
But that's where I'm saying
put it towards our country.
I know, but that's
as a distinct country and identity.
Listen. What I'm saying is they do that because of a fear of the people in America and not because they believe Israel first in that sense. So at the same time, is what I'm saying is we need to get to a place where they fear the people's vote in the sense that where they know we draw a line on Israel, they need to know that we draw a line on so many other things like not just our biblical conviction stuff, but the stuff that we believe is important, like in Israel is doing for their people, is in the sense of like what you're saying, is taking care of the needs of the impoverished, needs of the poor, needs of those who are hurting. Like they have to know there's just as much fear in making the wrong decision in that area than there would be in pulling off. If any leader, whether a Republican or Democrat, tomorrow went on a platform and said, I'm anti-Israel, they would lose majority of all of their votes. They know that. They would never do that. Only the wild West ones,
Right.
like Ilhan Omar and stuff like that, are saying stuff like that. The majority of them know they can't do that.
I would never say that either. I don't
I
believe
know,
that.
but I'm saying
We shouldn't be against Israel.
So then we need to get to a place where they feel that pressure.
It's
in
God's
all
will.
The other,
Israel exists.
Yes, where they feel that pressure in all other areas. Is what I'm saying.
Well, I don't think they fear the people at all.
I think.
because
Hey, we're both wearing tie-dye today. I didn't notice that. But you got to be on the letter one. That's a bad sample one. We got some new merch coming soon.
Anyways,
Listen,
this is a good discussion.
Does anyone got any
got?
thoughts or questions about this? Hold on. What?
Holy smokes, bro.
Who's here right now? Oh, they're here right now? In
the
your hand?
shirts
Let
are
me see
here.
one. Oh, go give me one. He said new merch is in right now. They just dropped it off, so let's check it out. We'll have it
Coming
live on the air
2023?
to show it to you. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, 2020. Yeah, maybe.
Oh,
Hey,
this was a
listen,
long discussion.
Listen, I know this is going to be
Dang,
an
man, I
Israel
told
on
you.
pure,
I
or
told you.
conversation on pure Israel and America geopolitics. Listen, we got other people in the room. Do you guys have any thoughts or questions or prognoses that you would like to share before we close out this conversation for the day?
I'll just say, Caleb, could be like you were saying you want to bring somebody on to have that conversation deeper, or this conversation. It was a very profound connection with Catholics and Mary and Christians and Israel. I thought that was pretty trippy.
Well, I think Caleb right now represents a lot of Americans in the sense that they're trying to make sense. You know, I've been to Israel enough. I have enough Jewish friends and I have enough Muslim friends that I've come to somewhat of a personal reconciliation with what is going on, and with my love and heart for Israel, but also my love and heart for the Palestinian people. You know, I post Palestinian things, and I even have people in my comments who are pro-Christian like, man, don't post that, take that off. You know, if I'm like in a Palestinian area or whatever, and I'm like, dude, I love the Palestinians as much as I do the Jewish people. Like. And in America, it's like, no, you can't say that. And I'm like, and I believe in the sovereignty of state of Israel. But if you're in Israel itself, like many of the Jewish people itself majority of the Palestinian kids and the Jewish kids, they all go to the same elementary schools together and the same junior highs and high schools. They don't have like separate schools. Mm-hmm. So they're friends. They go to birthday parties together and stuff like that. So there's this jadedness that we have in that regard. But what I say is Caleb does represent this group of people in America who are redefining or looking at, like, okay, where is our relationship with Israel? Why is it, as a Christian, why do I have to have it? Why is it important? Why do I need it? And I think that having someone that fits the script of someone that's more of an ambassador in that sense of the ideology of, because what I can do is I could just talk about my experience, but I would rather like to allow Caleb to drill into someone and uncover more of these truths, because I would say I have it and I reconcile with it, but I also believe that there's an issue in the air right now that no one's really touching on or tackling, because it's just, even for Christians, you can't talk about Muslim, you can't talk about Jews, you can't talk about Christianity, how it relates to those things. Like you just said, you can't talk about Catholicism. As a Christian, I'm not allowed to say there's anything good about Catholics. If you're a Catholic, you're not allowed to say there's anything good about evangelicals. You know, it's just this crazy space that we live in right now. Oh, look at this. Live on the air right now. We got some new...
more flexible?
Beyond the letter, yeah, a little more flexible. We had some samples made that weren't really they just kind of really like Caleb's is right now. So we got some new Beyond. That's the back. Beyond the letter shirts coming right now. Here's the front. Look at that. So a lot more. This is more screen printed, and then it bubbles up right here. I'm ready for it. Super dope.
Let's go.
Coming out January. You know, look out for it. Top of January. We'll make sure
just DM Chelsie and tell her, hey, we want these shirts, make it happen. Yeah. So I think if we have someone on where he can express these questions, and let someone who really, really spends a lot of time in these conversations to be able to respond to these things, and see where we're at. Really good stuff though. Anyone got anything else? No.
Well, let me ask you,
Lynn.
Chelsie.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Chelsie. I want to hear more from you.
Mm-hmm.
What was your most, since we're focusing on Israel and your trip, what was your most impactful experience in Israel this time around? This is your first time?
It's my second.
Your second. Oh, so this time around.
Yeah, this time around, and Pastor Adam said this, the first time you go to Israel, it feels like a dream because you're digesting so much information. And the second time, it does feel like home. So everything that you read in Scripture comes alive.
Mm-hmm.
But in regard to this conversation, what I was going to say, people in my age group and even younger who are Christian, we're not really having these conversations of the relationship between Israel and America. It wasn't even a conversation that I was involved in until I went to Israel and I realized, oh, this is a thing. We're kind of like my age group. Hey, it doesn't involve me, so I don't really have an opinion about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm in a season now as I'm in Israel. What should I have an opinion on as a believer?
Mm-hmm.
What should I be thinking about and caring about while in Israel, but living in America? What should I care about? And so this time around, that's what I was thinking about while I was there. Culturally, spiritually, what are the things that I should be bringing back to America that I'm learning here in Israel?
So what were some of those things?
I'm still reconciling those things. I'm still
So-
processing. I
so-
just got back this morning, so I need to take a nap
chewing
first.
on it.
Yeah, and then wake up and I'm still chewing on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Yeah, I was just mind blown when you said that you're talking to the barber, and you were pretty much, you had this revelation that you were the first Christian, like the actual practicing Christian that he's talked to, and I just was tripping out because I had that revelation talking to family when they're like, this Christian, I'm like, tell me more about them. And then I'm like, wait, turns out they're really not a practicing Christian based on how you represented their life or their view or whatever. And it's kind of crazy because you even said it. How many people do we bump shoulders with every day that we don't, have a Christian witness to, or even show the love of Christ in the way that they attribute it to Christ?
Yeah.
And so that was pretty eye-opening. I hope this is an episode people Google a lot for and dive in more because y'all.
Yeah, you
went
definitely
crazy.
have to. Yeah, I had this video. I have it right here. Actually, it's 6 minutes long, and like 2 trips ago, I was with some pastors, and we were at a pizza spot. And here's what you have to understand: in Israel, most Jewish people, they live in their own bubble, or you're there with other Palestinians who are majority going to be Muslim. So your understanding of a Christian is only 2 things. Either they're Catholic, so they think all of us Christians, we follow the Pope, every one of them. Or you're like a Palestinian Christian who isn't like super practicing, not super observant. So you just, historically, that's what your family goes by. So, like we'll be at shops and kind of the non-observant Jewish people, which is the majority in Israel, they'll get a little curious. What are you doing here? And to them, they can't even fathom why you even want to be in their land. Like they're like, what do you want to be here? And you're like, oh, to see where Jesus walked and see where. Oh, okay. Like, because they're not really observant, so they don't read the Bible like as if it's real. Like so, there was a group of friends that were Jewish, and they were all in their 20s. They were college students, and they had never met. Like I said with the barber, they had never met a Christian before that wasn't Catholic. And so they, the Catholics, they kind of see them as like a little crazy, because if you're in Israel, all the Catholics are rubbing all of these relics they have on all the holy sites. So they bring, they while they're there, they buy crosses and rosaries and then they go, oh, is this where Jesus is believed his body be laid? And then they rub the relics on it, the little cross, and they take it back home. And it's like a holy thing now for them. It'll ward off spirits and blah, blah, blah. So for a Jewish person, you're like,
these people are crazy. You know, like they rub their necklaces on like places they believe Jesus was at. Like they just like, you know, the Pope is like this weird guy that wears white. Like that is their view. And so when I said like, oh, I'm a pastor, she didn't know what a pastor was. She was like, what's a pastor?
Priest.
I said, oh, he like leads a congregation.
Think about a priest.
Yeah. She's like, oh, like a priest. I said, no, not like a priest. And she goes, you're not allowed to be married, right? I said, no, I could be married. She's like, what? Like she's amazed. So then one of my friends asks, hey, could I show you one of his, because she spoke pretty good English. He goes, can I show you one of his messages? And could I film you like responding to it? You know, like what you think about it? And she was like, yeah, that'd be fine. So literally she watches 5 minutes of one of my sermons.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. I have it. I have it on my phone. I show you guys when we finished recording. Now I know everybody's on the
They're
podcast.
gonna watch it.
They're gonna be interested in find it. You know, like maybe we'll figure out a way to share it. But so it's a 6-minute interview. They show her my sermon 5 minutes in. She looks up and she goes, "You're teaching Jesus on here?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "If I had something like this in my country, I would go to it and I would listen to it." And I go, "You don't have." I mean, maybe there is in Israel, but at least for her, and for the majority of her friends, and she had 5 friends with her, they had no idea what happens in an evangelical Christian church. And so she watched our music, she watched our worship, she watched one of my sermons, just clip-its, like a couple minutes at a time. And she looks up and she goes, "This is incredible. Looks like so much fun." She goes, "I would go to this if I had it." So then they go, "Okay, so we're gonna pull the camera on you. We're gonna interview you." And it's a 6-minute interview, and in it, she talks about like how she would be interested in Jesus if she saw him in the light that we're sharing him. Wow. And even in this conversation, so then she began to have questions about Jesus. This is a person. We were at a pizza place. Listen. We were at a pizza spot 150 yards from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where it's believed that Jesus resurrected. We were 500 yards from the Western Wall, where Temple Mount is. Like, this is the epicenter of religion and the epicenter of Christianity. And we're 100 yards away in a pizza spot, and this girl goes, "Never have heard Jesus presented before, outside of what I've seen Catholics do with the little relics." And then she goes, and I never knew the message of Jesus, because she didn't know his death, burial, and resurrection. She walks by the Church of the Holy Sepulchre every day. She's never wondered like what happened in there. So, and she's right by it. So we have this full interview of this discussion.
You said she was in her 20s?
Yeah, college student.
Yeah.
You know, like which by and large represents the average college student in America, you know, like not fully aware of kind of what, like just in their own bubble, you know, like their own social media bubble or whatever else. And so it's now have been, Jermaine, like to what you're saying, it's been continual conversations that I have when I'm there of like people when they meet me, and there's nothing special about me. But when they meet me and they talk, the resounding commonality with the secular Jewish people is I've never met a Christian like you. And what they're saying is one that is so open, caring, understanding, but also so non-religious. Like to them, that is their biggest thing, is like, I'm not convinced that these religious expenditures that everyone is doing here, because no one's changed. No one cares about each other. No one loves each other. No one helps. Why would I do any of these things? You know, like I've talked to a lot of non-observant Jews. Like, I only go to the Western Wall when I have like an emergency prayer. The same thing an evangelical Christian does in America. Like, you only go to church when your marriage is about to go in the dumps. Right. For a lot of them, that's the only way they'll go to the Western Wall, which is the retaining wall of the second temple, where the Temple Mount is. That's the only time they'll go and pray. Is like, okay, I'm going through a rough time. I'm gonna go to. But then even then, like the barber that was cutting my hair, he's like, "Man, I won't." He goes, I had an Asian guy who who's Jewish, an Asian Jewish person who was in the Holy Land. He lived there, and he's like, man, I was cutting his hair, and he was going through it in life, and I told him, you should go to the Western Wall, and you should like just go pray, try to get something up to heaven, because it's believed that Temple Mount is the point where heaven and earth kiss. So the reason why they go to the Western Wall is because your prayers reach heaven the fastest. That's like the wives' tale, you know. So he's like, go to the Western Wall, and your prayer will reach God. And he said the dude came back. It was like, no, I didn't enjoy it. Like everybody was staring at me weird, and I couldn't get down with the, you know. It's like, so for a lot of them, like that's kind of their view of the expression of faith. And so it's the fact that a radical nature, to be honest, I don't know how it would be welcomed in Israel. If you brought a radical nature of Christ, many would not want, I believe many would not want anyone to be converted to Christianity unless you were born in it. So I don't know how it would be accepted if you had revival in Israel. And a lot of my Christian friends, they'll say that, like, well, I'm praying for Israel to have revival in Israel for the gospel. And I agree, but I believe your chances of getting the gospel in Israel is about as likely as getting the gospel in Mecca, where the holiest place of Islam is. You know, like go to Mecca and preach the gospel on the corner and see how long that'll last. Like it won't last long in that sense, nor do I think it would last very long in Israel. If you preached a sermon like Stephen did in Acts in Israel on like public television, I don't number one, I don't think you would even be allowed to be on public television, but I don't think it would be received by many. You would have to be in like, but what I mean is by the controlling forces of politics and other stuff like that, just like we're seeing in America, in other ways, like ours is seen in a very progressive New World sense. I think theirs is in a very preservation sense. And so,
well, it seems like it's not for lack of knowledge, because the witness there is incredible as far as just the churches, the Christianity, the Islam, all of these witnesses of God, of I'm not saying non-Christian faiths are necessarily witnesses of, you know what I mean? I don't know. I got myself in too much trouble today. I'm saying, so what I'm saying is it's such an epicenter of witness. So it's not for lack of knowledge, right? In the sense of, I've never heard of Jesus. It's like you have all of these expressions of faith.
Maybe they would know his name.
It's like,
they would know his
commonplace.
Name. No, they would know his name. They wouldn't know his message. So like that girl didn't know his message. She didn't know his death, burial, and resurrection. She didn't know that he's the way towards forgiveness of sins. She didn't know that he is the propitiation of our sins. She didn't know that he was crucified for the things that he was preaching in those days. Like, she's not told any of that.
See, that's
stuff,
so weird,
you know?
because it's like you hear about like these Christian television stations. They're like, we're reaching every household in Israel with the good news. You know, we just got this radio station. I mean, that's been happening for decades now, where Israel has been inviting Christian ministers and ministries, and so that's why. I mean, I don't know much about the
statement you just made. I don't know that they're on the radio. I don't know that. What I know, when they say they're reaching them, they saying they're reaching them in terms of being the hands and feet of Jesus in a missionary sense. Like, they're putting food on their table. They're having feeding centers and stuff like that. Like, I don't know of an organization in Israel or that's American based that teaches the conversion of Jewish people for the sake of the gospel, like we would anywhere else. Like, if we're in Uganda or if you're talking to Convoy of Hope or Compassion International, they talk about, we feed these kids, but we establish a church, we teach them the gospel, we give them an opportunity to go to church. I don't know that there is an American Christian organization that does that in Israel, where I know they do good, and I don't know of anyone who teaches, proclaims the gospel to them in a public sense. I don't even know if that's allowed in the sense of like
public evangelism
in public airtime. Yeah. Like, I don't even know
open air preaching and so.
You definitely couldn't do that, I don't think. But because proselytization is not necessarily looked favorably on. So like what I just said is like the religion you're born into, by and large, that's what you stay in, and that's what's allowed. So the Muslims who are doing the Salah, the Muslim call to prayer, 5 times a day, they're allowed to publicly do that on open airwaves and open speakers, but they're not proselytizing. They're not telling anyone to join Islam or anything. Like, that's just a way of so in the same sense, you and I as Christians, we can go in a space and we can sing worship songs all we want. We can do that publicly all day. But for us to have a John the Baptist or anyone else style preaching, or even like Stephen in Acts of repent for the gospel, Jesus is the only one that can save. He's the Messiah. He's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Like, I don't know how accepted that would be in a public sense. It's definitely not allowed. Like, it's not, a lot of them don't like us wearing crosses on certain religious sites and stuff like that, which I respect because it's not their belief. I understand, but nonetheless, it's not accepted. So,
yeah, such an interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Place.
So that's why I always go there, and I'm like, man, I would do a church here, and then at the same time, I'm like, I don't even know if that would be allowed. I've met pastors before who were like, oh, we have a church plant here, but I never knew them enough to ask more questions of what that meant and what that looked like in a public sense, because only Israeli citizens can own land. So I don't know how you would have to find someone that was a Messianic Jew, or someone that's willing to buy, like, you purchase land through them to be able to have a church. Like, that's what you would have to do, but everywhere I go, my heart burns for anyone to believe in the gospel. So,
yeah, right.
But at the same time, I if I went to Mecca, my heart would burn to preach the gospel, but I also don't believe that I would last very long doing that in a public corner,
Right.
In that sense. So, yeah, it's interesting dynamics right now. Yeah,
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we got some good stuff from an ambassador has real world experience.
Yeah. Well,
and I think I think what's been so beneficial, just like hearing from personal experience what the climate is like there. That's very interesting. What the interpersonal dynamics are is very fascinating. And anytime you can bring real life experience to more of the ideologies and political viewpoints that I brought, anytime you can couple that with real life experiences that Adam brought to the table, I think we can have a fuller, more understanding, more nuanced understanding of these very sticky, confusing topics.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hey, great, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this conversation. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Make sure to throw in your thoughts in the comments and whatever else it may be. We're interested in hearing other people's perspective on this, because trying to understand where everyone's coming from and try to see, I think one of the steps towards someone who may be pro-Israel in the sense of the old days of explaining it, of just saying, hey, well, it's because of this verse. Well, a lot of people are starting to say, well, I don't know that I think that verse means that. And so there has to be broader conversation to be able to have that dialogue. And I think Chelsie made a really good point, because her generation is very lethargic if it has nothing to do with them. And so if you're going to engage that generation, you have to do it in different ways. And you have to be able to have the conversation, because in the past, if you just said, hey, well, and we're seeing it today, right? Like, if someone has a view about someone's race, oh, well, it makes you a racist. No, it makes me someone who has questions, and we've gotten to the place where it's like, those are those cards, right? Like, we throw those cards out right away. Well, you're a racist, you're Islamophobic, you're anti-Semitic, you're this, you're that, as people are processing like everything that's going on in the world. So you have to have conversations like we're having, be able to wrestle those things out. And like you said, you're like, some days I'm this and some days I'm that, depending on what information I have at the time, which I think is a fair
analysis of everything we've talked about.
And I think in the realm of eschatology, we need to show each other grace.
Yeah.
Because these things have been argued about for centuries, thousands
Literally
of years
since
now.
Jesus,
Right.
You know, and so
Yeah.
I think just the conversation is fascinating because it's been had for centuries. It's a fascinating conversation because it deals with the second coming of our Lord,
Yeah.
which all believers are anticipating. But at the same time, it is very nuanced, differing perspectives, a lot of disagreements. One of the top Christian scholars in the world just converted from a amillennial perspective to a postmillennial perspective. Later in life, converted in his eschatology. You know, a lot of premillennials are becoming postmillennial right now. And like I said, I'm like, most days I'm premillennial. Some days I kind of postmillennial has some interesting, cool perspectives that, you know, but you know, so extend
and
grace.
for those who have greater questions
in
about
the
that, you can either
conversation
Google
of
them, or like I said,
eschatology.
we'll
Yeah.
definitely look
Bring
to
somebody
sending an
on.
invite and break it down in a we could break it down, but we would need 20 hours. These guys who are theologians who do it for college students every single day, they'll be able to summarize it in 30 minutes for us like we need, you know, like because we would spend hours, you know, trying to break it all down in a fair way. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share this with somebody. Appreciate you all joining us today. God bless.